let's bring this meeting to order. This is the June 18th Climate Action Committee meeting for Corte Madera. Do the roll call, please.
Yes, so committee member Ruiz is not present. Committee member Simon. Thank you. Committee member Sampath.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member D. Alexander.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lang.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Burtis.
Here.
Thank you.
Let's salute the flag. Very good. Great. Well, we don't have any public in the room. Do we have any online?
Checking for hands raised, and I'm not seeing any at this time.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment period for non-agenda items. Minutes from the last meeting were circulated in the pre-agenda packet. Were there any comments? They were very thorough, Phoebe. Thank you. I would move to approve those.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
She wasn't here.
We're here, right? Okay. Abstention. Very good. So moving on to general business. Topic of the day in multiple ways, discussion of outreach to promote multifamily EV charger installations. So we have a couple of sub points here. First one, I guess we can just go in order that they were presented. It might actually be useful before we maybe jump into that. Just maybe Phoebe, you'd be willing to give a recap of today's meeting, which I thought was quite interesting. This was chaired or hosted by Marine Conservation League. I know you were on the call. Phoebe was on the call. I think Sarah was on the call. I was there in person, actually. So, and I thought it was pretty interesting, actually. But I mean, Phoebe, would you mind maybe giving a quick summary, or I can if you don't?
Sure. Yeah. Feel free to chime in. So it was the meeting of the Marine Conservation League's climate specific working group. And the topic of the meeting was EV adoption. And a lot of it was actually focused on multifamily EV chargers. So very relevant to what the committee's pursuing. And there were presentations from Marine Clean Energy, their EV charging program, the charger program, as well as some of their other programs related to EVs like MCE Sync, which is the sort of time of use charging incentives. They have an instant EV rebate for income qualified customers at the dealership. And then there was also a presentation from Peninsula Clean Energy, which is the CCA serving the South Bay. I'm not sure of their exact territory. And they have some similar programs, but it seems like they've been running them for a bit longer and have had more installations there. And interestingly, their focus is really on providing chargers in every space rather than a shared charger approach at multifamily. And they've found that to be more effective. Yeah. How's that working, Phil?
It's working fine.
Okay, great.
Except
Just
for
got
that.
some feedback, so I wanted to check. Yeah. And yeah, Philip, the presenter from Peninsula Clean Energy, had actually shared some data with me previously on the adoption rates they're seeing at their sites that they've installed chargers in every station, and they're seeing pretty good increasing adoption and usage of the charging stations at the multifamily sites where they've installed typically a level 1 outlet in every parking space. So that was a really interesting presentation. And then the last presentation was from Annika Osborne of Cool the Earth. talking more generally about the rebate landscape and programs available to help people get EVs and what EV options are out there right now. Let's see, couple other things that I noted during that is that MC is actually considering right now for their rebate program, the multifamily units need to have a minimum of 4 apartments, and they're considering actually reducing that, which would expand the properties that are eligible for their rebates. And then I also asked a question about the outreach that Peninsula Clean Energy is doing on their EV charging program. And they have done direct mailers, and they actually there's a database called CoStar, which has more information about properties specifically. So they actually bought that database to figure out who the property owners were and target those mailers more. And they had felt like they didn't get a huge amount of response from that. And their outreach method that they felt was most effective was a free 30-minute webinar focused on property owners that they hold somewhat frequently, it sounds like, and they normally get 50 to 100 attendees at those.
Yeah, sorry. So, okay, that's the point we were just talking about when the direct mailer. I interpreted his comment to mean that the databases that they bought weren't very good. That's what I thought he was saying. So maybe we can, if you're in contact with him, maybe you can just follow up and.
Sure.
I mean, he was right at he only had 2 minutes left. And so he was asked this question. Well, I guess no, that's not, but he was quite brisk, but maybe to get a little more about what things have you tried from an outreach point of view, what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, the idea with these webinars was like a 30-minute, tell you everything you need to know and ask whatever question you want and just try to get, high touch to a lot of property owners. And that was partly an awareness, but also just to kind of get over the inhibitions that people might have and kind of reset any preconceptions that people might have.
So can you tell me again who this person was and what geographic area they addressed?
So Peninsula Clean Energy is the MCE equivalent of, I think was it San Leandro? I can't remember which.
San Mateo.
Is it San Mateo? Okay. So San Mateo.
So this pertains to that area.
Yeah. It's like they're about half the size of MCE in terms of revenue.
Familiar with
Okay.
that.
Yeah. And so it sounds like have a couple differences, I would say, between what MCE is doing. They've focused much more on level 1 chargers and getting them kind of 1 per spot as opposed to trying to do shared level 2 chargers. And I think are doing a lot more outreach. Let's say they're ahead of MCE in terms of the amount of outreach that they're doing to property owners.
But nonetheless, they found what was most successful was a webinar.
Yeah. Now, how they got the word out about the webinar, we don't know. So
good question.
Good to find out. The other thing he said, which I thought was very interesting. Well, somebody right at the end asked what were the lessons learned, because he'd said early on that shared level 2 chargers in multifamily really didn't work. And so the question was like, well, what's the issue there? And the number one issue was that if you do make a renovation to that, you have to make it ADA compliant, which means you need to make it van accessible, which means you lose probably 2 parking spots, I would assume. And that almost every landlord was like, yeah, we're not doing that. So that was the big showstopper. Cost was the second one, and I'm trying to remember the third was maybe
the driver experience.
Yeah, the driver experience of having to like get up in your pajamas in the middle of the night and go, like your car in. So,
But Sarah, you don't experience any of that. It has shared chargers.
No, not necessarily. There's 2 charging stations that each have 2. So there's 4 total spots, and it charges at about 10% an hour. So you do have to remove the car within 15 minutes of it reaching 100%. So if you don't time it well, it could be that have business to get up in the middle of the night. But I think most people, knowing that, can anticipate when to move their car or to move it before going to bed, perhaps. I haven't heard of that being an issue per se, but it really is up to you on how you want to allocate your time, I suppose.
But there is space for ADA.
There,
There's a space on either side to allow for offload.
yes, there is, trying to remember. Yes, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this was more in the context of retrofit, so I don't know what that, I don't know when, I assume they put the chargers in when they built Belmont Tam, but yeah, I think for retrofit where they've got all the spaces assigned,
Right.
whose space are we going to take away to put in the chargers? That's not going to work. So I think
Right.
that it was really helpful. Anything else that you heard that?
Well, he did mention that they would approach he mentioned that they would approach the consumer with what their idea would be about what they would do to initiate the conversation, and then offer options from there. And so it turns out that the consumer often wants something different, and a lot of times they'll buy into a like level, if they want level 2 chargers, they'll buy into level 1 chargers, and because they can put more of them in for the same cost.
Yeah, so in their technical assessment, which they also do like MCE, they would offer, somebody might say, I want to put in 2 shared level 2 chargers. And they said, great, we'll plot that out for you. We're also going to give you 2 other alternatives. And that 2/3 of the time, people were ending up doing a different alternative than they started with, which resulted in more chargers than they had anticipated. So
just to clarify, Phil, when you say consumer, do you mean property owner?
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe as a follow-up, Phoebe, if we could, I don't know if you'd be willing to spend a half an hour on the phone with you or with us or whatever, or just share on email, what were the outreach things that they tried?
Yeah.
And how are they generating this, what sounds like great turnout for their
Webinars.
webinars? Yeah.
Yes, I will follow up with Philip.
Anyway, timely and quite useful, I thought. So why don't we, you want to talk about the postcard first, and then we'll move on to, other-
Yes, do we want to display it or just if everybody's already seen it and go forward?
so this would go to property owners.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish would be the Corte Madera database, as I understand it, which is property owners, which I assume you have via tax database, or
Yeah, so we have access to it's called Marin Map that has that property owner information. So what we've done for other outreach, but is probably not as relevant for this, is that we've sent it to the address and the property owner. But we have access obviously to both. So the property owner may not be a Corte Madera resident. They might be, in a different state or
Right.
city. So this is Karen put together a draft, and then I took her draft and put it into the same format that we use for the heat pump water heater postcard. So that's what this version is. And the front side sort of has the information about EV adoption and why you might want to consider installing chargers at your property, with sort of the main point about the MCE incentives. And then the back side has more information about MCE's program. I do think it's probably a little heavy on text right now, so probably cut some of that out.
I thought it was good. I really didn't have the comments other than trying to put it in context of our overall outreach efforts. This really focuses on MCE and their incentive program, which is great. I'm just wondering, I know with the committee, we have kind of a 2-pronged effort with Phil having, I'm available for your questions if you don't want to do the MCE networking. So are we okay with just targeting, this is sort of bring awareness overall and saying, here, you can get money? I'm not quite sure we want to put Phil's name here, call me and, I'll come over. But just knowing that it's really a MCE promotion, which actually I don't think is such a bad idea, but just as long as we're aware of it. And then the other thing is that we really don't have any way of tracking response here. It all goes to MCE. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we could just ask MCE to keep us aware of any communications they get from Corte Madera. Those are just my two, just so we can be aware of it. But other than that, I actually think this is a really good first step and worth doing, just to send it out and get that subject. And then we could explore further presentation by Phil for property owners, maybe the webinar, which would be more broad, or other ways to be more broad, where you have more of an opportunity to discuss alternatives. But that's just my thoughts.
Do we know what percentage of Corte Madera residences are MCE customers? I had the same question, which is like, does you have to be an MCE customer to access the subsidies?
Yes, it's huge. It's the majority.
Is
Yeah.
it? Okay,
Yeah. Not everyone has PG&E employee incentives to
right.
stick. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so good points. Any other comments?
Yeah, I had a kind of a question, because I was thinking about that same fact of not exactly knowing how effective these postcards are, just in terms of, once they go out, we don't get feedback from the committee directly. I know sometimes with the QR codes, there's data tracking with them or behind them where you can see how many people scan them. I was curious if that's a feature of this QR code, and if nothing else, we could see how many people actually scan the code, and that can give us an idea of how many people engage with the postcard once they receive them, and kind of give us an open rate, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. I have done that. I have set that up in the past. I don't think I did it for this one. But I can look into that. I'm sure that's something we can set up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful, and that might address our tracking issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure we can also ask MCE, if they get any contacts from Corte Madera in the next couple of months, but that doesn't address, how many people visit their website and actually don't contact. So good point.
I had a couple of additional points. I the same reaction Karen did, which I don't think was a negative one, but that this is very much an MCE focused thing. But I think if the market share is high enough, that's fine. And maybe it encourages some people to sign up for MCE, which I guess all things equal would be.
I could check, and I'm not necessarily sure, but I think it's well over 98%. I mean, it's huge.
Okay.
It's huge.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, it's you have to opt out if you don't want MCE. Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine then. I was wondering, in the new permitting fee structure, was there a 50% reduction for EV chargers?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but that may have been one of the categories.
I think
that
it
was
might have been.
included.
So if there is, we might want to mention that just as another
Mhm.
incentive. I also thought on the front page, you've got two big bullets with two sub bullets. So really you've got kind of call it three bullet points. Instead of having two that are about the penetration of EVs, would it make sense to highlight the technical assistance aspect as the third point? So just say 40% of, whatever the number is of current purchases are EVs, chargers can increase property values, and the program has technical assistance to help you, just in terms of like main messages you want to get across. Because it mentions the technical assistance on the next page, but it's kind of buried in a paragraph. I just wonder if that's something you want to call out more prominently on the first cover.
So You're saying removing the bullet point about 11%
Yeah, I would,
of total?
well, one of the two, I would just use one of those or combine them into something shorter.
I would argue to combine it. I'm sorry, because I think knowing that, over 1 in 10 are
Mhm.
EVs, not just this year, I think is important, but yeah, sure, make it more concise.
Yeah, so 1 point's about EV penetration, one is about chargers can increase property values, and the third one is we can help. So we, MCE can help. There's technical assistance as a sort of a main point. And then the 40%, I thought it was more like 50%. And I think on the slide, the infographic that was shared in the subsequent item, it was over 50%. So we need to figure out which one of those is.
Yeah, I had a hard time duplicating it with it. It seems like the data is updated. Really, when I drafted the postcard, I tried to get on and I came up with similar data, but it's worth looking at again. It's a little fuzzy.
And
Yeah,
so this is also Marin County-wide data,
correct.
as opposed to just Corte Madera, because
Got it.
we thought that, people who are looking at apartments in Corte Madera are not necessarily already Corte Madera residents. They might be
Makes sense.
even broader than Marin, actually, but that's why we broadened it to Marin numbers, which are slightly less than Corte Madera's.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then two more minor points on the back side. I think this table should say rebates somewhere because it's unclear what we're, so light green rebate or deep green rebate or something, or just rebates over the top of it. And just a slight wording change suggestion. Eligible properties are MCE customers with 4 or more units. I found the way that was worded a little bit confusing. Not to wordsmith you, but there you go. Yeah, that was good. I as a initial draft, that was really effective. Any other comments from the? Yeah. Bill, any comments?
No.
No? Is there any public comment on this one?
We do have a hand raised from Jody Timms.
Okay.
Jody, go ahead with your comment when you're ready.
Good evening, everybody. Jody Timms, the chair of Fairfax Climate Action Committee. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself this morning, Patrick, at the MCL meeting. I didn't realize that was you sitting across from me. So anyway, nice to meet you virtually here.
Likewise.
I thought the presentation this morning was great too. And we've been trying to think about the whole postcard and, reaching out. We have tried to reach out to a bunch of our property owners. But one of the things that really struck me, and you just mentioned this, is the fact that MCE does provide this free technical assistance is kind of really your first step before you have to buy anything or, figure out that. They'll come and, do that whole assessment of your site, where you should have it, what your load is, all that kind of stuff for multifamily. So I just think it's a really good idea to kind of highlight that up front too. That really struck me as when Philip said, stressing the technical assistance has really helped kind of get a foot in the door. So I just wanted to kind of lend my thought about that there. And that's kind of how I'd like to try to direct Fairfax to go to, is to really highlight that absolutely free technical assistance. So anyway, yeah, great meeting. Thanks for letting me speak briefly.
No, that's great. Good, very good comment. And thanks for participating again. We owe you one. That's all for that one. Okay.
Let comment right now.
So it seems like the content is very close. How long will it take, Phoebe, do you think, to get the mailing list together?
I'm not sure. There aren't that many multifamily properties in Corte Madera, so it shouldn't take that long to track it down, but I'm not an expert in the software database, so I'll have to work with some of my coworkers on that.
Okay. I mean, I think I mean, we had a little brief chat about this the other day, but my view would be we should just charge ahead with this. And I think once you get a revised draft, maybe circulate by email for comment. And assuming everybody's cool with it, then I don't see a need to wait until the next meeting to get this out, would be my point of view.
And I think that's good.
And actually, since it sounds like a relatively small number of them, we could even follow it up with a second postcard later in the year. From a cost point of view, I'm thinking it's not going to cost much, right? We're probably talking a few
Yeah.
postcards.
Do we just have addresses then for the owners? Do we have phone numbers? No, just addresses. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay.
And I assume MCE is set up to receive inquiries of the magnitude that they would be likely to get, which would be, I assume, tens of people.
Yes,
It's not
they
gonna come
have
as a
an
surprise, but
intake
yeah.
form on their website.
Does that seem reasonable? We just kind of proceed by email / subcommittee and just kind of make sure we get it out the door soon. Sound good?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's great.
Okay. Any further comment about the postcard or timing? Yeah. No. Okay, well, Phil, do you want to talk about your NPOA, Marin Property Owners Association presentation?
Sure. I spoke with Miles Smith, who knows the secretary there, and he said he would introduce me to him, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but what my plan is to introduce myself as a fellow landlord and tell them a bit about my project and what I did and what I went through and the method that I used. And then with the caveat that I have no interest in performing any work on their properties, and that I won't recommend others to perform the work. But what I'm interested in doing is sharing my experience and helping them understand what they might be up against going through the process. And then there is a possibility to collaborate this meeting with MCE if they're interested. And I'm willing to talk to their technical staff and see if that's something they might want to do. Otherwise, the purpose of it is to reduce greenhouse gases by placing EV charging in these units. And as Philip said in the meeting today, that you need to put these things in and then the people will come later. And I think there's lots of points here about how to recover costs if they want to do so, and how they can get ahead of the curve in getting this work done while there are a lot of opportunities to do so with rebates and so forth that might go away eventually. As well as, the addition of attracting and retaining quality tenants as adoption rates increase, which they have been doing. And the method that I propose to go about this is to meet with interested parties at their buildings and locate their panel, try to determine what the capacity is, determine what runs on gas in their units, and then if they, obviously they're going to be interested at this point, but they would need to hire an electrician to determine the load capacity, or if MC is on board with this, that's another, they could determine that for free before they go any further with MCE. And then discuss the various problems they might encounter depending on what kind of charging system they want to put in. And that might involve a transfer switch. It might involve locating sub panels strategically so they have the most efficient circuitry they can get. And then look at different ways to access the connection from the sub panels to the chargers themselves. And there's various ways of doing that. Different kinds of raceways that carry the conduit to that, and various ways they can go about that with hiring help, whether the electrician wants to do it. The electrician is required by code to do the electrical work, including putting the conduits together and pulling the wires through the conduits and making all the connections. But the electrician isn't necessarily required to dig ditches and build raceways that could be made out of wood or various kinds of hangers and that sort of thing. So there's strategic ways where a landlord could save money by putting infrastructure in place that makes the electrician's life easy. And I'd like to discuss getting to that point where you're at the charger ready location where you put the NEMA plug in that the car plugs into. And then from there, they have the option of just letting the tenant plug into it, or retaining the services of a vendor who can put in networking. And that would be another point where if MCE was there with me, they could describe that more fully. I think I could describe it just fine, but the idea here is to get them interested in what I did and how economical it can be and how it can be, benefit to not just them as a landlord financially, but also as doing a good thing for the planet. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And of course, it depends on the landlord themselves or who's there and what their knowledge level is as far as how in depth.
Sal, you're having the big one.
Bill, do I remember correctly that you said it was about $2,500 per charger?
That's the cost I incurred. Yeah.
That was a level 2 charger.
Yes.
We were hearing 13,000 per.
Well,
I
that
think they
was
were
an-
talking about that high level 2, not the lower level 2.
And Phil, was yours a wall outlet?
For me?
Was yours a wall outlet?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's distinct from what was discussed in the meeting today as being 13,000 is what we have out in the town hall here. A sort of standalone
Right.
charger with ports and a payment system and software, all that.
But still remarkably cheap, because that's what they were talking about for level 1, which was just the plug, right? Basically.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were saying for the outlets more generally. The outlet, just having an outlet is a lot cheaper than having a full charging station.
They're also talking about larger spaces, I think, underground that have long raceways. And I think that can add quite a bit to the cost. Right. And I've heard figures, Cool the Earth gives figures. They have a template for a landlord could go to that website and look at it. And, Annika, has produced this, and it gives a list of costs, projected costs and that sort of thing. And it's somewhere in between. So the costs are all over the place depending on your particular situation. And like Philip said, the first thing we want to do is get the low hanging fruit, get the ones that are where people don't realize that they can do this and do it economically.
So I had a comment, just, Phil, thank you for doing this. It kind of outlines it. Real minor comment, when you said, I believe you said on the purpose, infrastructure for multifamily, install infrastructure. I would just clarify, say, increase the infrastructure. We're not trying to blanket everything. We're just trying to go get a little ahead from where we are. So, and the purpose to place EV charging infrastructure in multifamily housing, I would just say to place additional EV charging. So anyway, and I guess the other thing is, we're sending out these postcards and it really is kind of a dual path. MCE is offering free technical assistance and you're stepping up to say, hey, I'll help you. If a property owner raises their hand, say at this forum, and says, well, who should I go to, you or MCE? I mean, do we have kind of some guidance here for our communications to say, well, we're offering just, our experience and MCEs, and how are we going to position this?
I think if MCE is going to be involved, then I will need to talk with their technical people and get a game plan together for who says what, why. I mean, I'm offering my experience as a landlord and as a general contractor who's built lots of commercial buildings and understands some of the pitfalls of doing this kind of work and can offer creative solutions for how to get around it. Whereas MCE might have more of a deeper knowledge of transfer switches and why they need them and when to put and other vendors and that sort of thing, but more on the electrical side than the infrastructure side. Or
You're already going
Can't
beyond
say.
my level of expertise. So let me just, I think it would be great if we could have just a real general statement, maybe when you work with MCE, of saying our relative expertises are, MCEs, electrical, I know some, not shortcut, but economies that can be accomplished from my experience. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
would
I
be
think
helpful.
I think I would want to have a practice session
Yeah, yeah,
with them and a run through
sure. Anyway,
what the
but
thing
thank you.
is.
It's good.
Mhm.
I think, I mean, that's a great question. I think regardless of whether they go to MCE, I think the point is Phil's lessons from his experience can still reduce the cost because
Right.
MCE, as I understand, particularly for level 2 chargers, is not going to cover the whole thing. So to the extent that they can be smart about pre-work before the electrician shows up, they can probably bring the whole cost of the project down and still qualify if they want to use,
Right.
if they're MCE customers and they want to use the time of use, and network pricing and all that, then
Yeah.
they get the benefit of the subsidies. So I think the lessons learned are valuable regardless of whether they go with MCE or do it themselves.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe one way to phrase that would be, that was very simple, pre-work. I'm very skilled in finding economic solutions for pre-work prior to the electrical solution. So, either one, something like that. Yeah.
I was wondering if and when we get a date with MPOA for your presentation, or maybe yours at MCEs, if we know that prior to the postcard going out, would we want to include that on the postcard?
Are the Marin Property Owners Association meetings open to the public, or do you have to be a member?
You have to be a member, as far as I know.
So in that case, I'm not sure that I would include it on the postcard. I don't know how many property owners are part of that.
Right. Okay. And any luck getting a date with either getting a response from MCE or getting a date with MPOA?
No, I expect that Miles will get back to me soon.
Okay.
I sent him an email last Friday. He's a busy guy.
Any other questions from the committee? No? In that case, any public comments or questions?
And not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. Good luck getting that. Getting
Thank
their
you.
engagement. So is there anything else we want to talk about regarding multifamily EV chargers at this point? We have a plan.
Yeah, just an update on the collaboration with MCE. We did discuss, and they're interested in collaborating on a co-branded email campaign that would be advertising their program. So that's in the works. We don't have a timeline for that yet, but they are interested. And that would be, MCE would be developing that content and sending it out to their email contacts of multifamily properties in Corte Madera. And then there were a couple other ideas that had come up at different points in the EV subcommittee, such as if we wanted to do any outreach to tenants, whether that's another postcard or a flyer or social media or something. And the county has a example flyer for tenants about, how to talk to your landlord about getting EV chargers if you don't have them. So that's something we could look at replicating. Phil had also brought up at a previous meeting the idea of putting a QR code on our public EV charging stations, which have been funded through MCE rebates, sort of prompting people to scan the code and learn about how you can get these rebates and get chargers in your multifamily property. If there's, assuming there's multifamily tenants who are using those public charging stations. So those are some of the other ideas that I don't know if the committee wants to discuss or.
So I have a comment. So I think it would be great to have on the website, the town website, a link to the county instructions on, your rights of getting chargers at your multifamily dwelling. I hesitate to put too much effort into promoting it because you do have to pay for it as a tenant, otherwise. So I don't know how far that would go. I mean, I think it's really good to make people aware of it via some kind of an email or website or the newsletter, but I don't know, postcard spurring action. It's expensive for the tenant. It's not their property. Or it could be, I guess, if it's a condominium. I don't know. That's just my initial take. How do people feel about that?
I think it's more for the county's flyer anyways is focused on resources for the tenant if they want to approach their landlord to ask them to install chargers. Not that the tenant themselves would install them. Just to clarify.
Yeah, I like the idea. I particularly like Phil's idea. I think accessing people at the charger is a great idea. And those are very likely to be the target demographic if they're using the public charger. So having a simple QR code, 1 EV chargers in your apartment building, in your apartment complex, and, scan the QR code and it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
I think it's a great call. And
Yeah.
probably relatively easy to implement.
I agree.
I'm not sure what the path forward for that would be. Have we done something like that? Has the town done something like that before?
Not to my knowledge. I think, the next steps would be figuring out what we want the sticker to say. If it's, what want EV chargers in your apartment or something like that. And then where it would link to, if it would just go directly to the MCE site, or if we want to create a town landing page that has some more information, maybe some of the tenant resources from the county. And then it would just be designing it and printing it and taking them out there.
I would say maybe a first step would be to look at what the county has and circulate it in the committee. And I mean, if it's already, if it's exactly what we need, why not just link it there? But I think it would be worth maybe circulating it to the committee and just checking.
Any other comments? No, good ideas. I think that one interesting. On the MCE co-branded email campaign, I guess we're waiting. We don't have a timeline from that. So we'll just have to see how that progresses. But so we can at least push forward with our postcard. And maybe the QR thing, which would be great. What do people think about the tenant? I mean, Karen, thank you for your feedback on that, on the tenant mailings. Are there other opinions from the committee members about whether we want to do a outreach to tenants? Direct mailer? Newsletter. I mean, there are a variety of things we can do that don't involve.
Yeah, the newsletter is relatively low effort.
Yeah.
Want to include something there.
Maybe we could do that as a starting point. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's got theoretically has good numbers. I don't know what the. Okay, well, other ideas are welcome. I would say share them by email with Phoebe and she can circulate between now and the next meeting and we can have a further discussion about it. Good. Okay. Unless any further comment on that, should we move on? Yeah. All right. So 4B, discussion of the student ambassador program. Next steps.
Yes. So yeah, thank you. So since our last meeting, we've done a push for recruiting for a new student ambassador. We developed a flyer, and with the support of Sid and Sienna, we got it in front of Redwood High School students through their TV screens and newsletter within the school. And the town communications manager also helped me include it in the town's newsletter, the Facebook page, the website, Nextdoor. And with the link tracking I had, I saw that there was over 1,000 clicks on the position description. So that felt like a good effort for us towards the very end of the school year to be able to get it out in front of people. And it was pushed for about a month. With those results, we had one applicant that Phoebe and I reviewed yesterday, and we feel that they would be an excellent addition to to the team over here. And my proposal is that I will be setting up, if this person agrees to take on the role, the preliminary meeting with this individual within the next month or before our next committee meeting, and go over the structure for how we do meetings, kind of go over some of the requirements of the Student Ambassador Program, and get them acclimated to the group before the school year starts, and then they can really hit the ground running with outreach efforts. From the committee, I invite anyone who would like to join me for the preliminary meeting to do so. You can let me know, and I'll include you in the correspondence to set that up. I'd also like to invite Sid and perhaps Sienna to that meeting. I think having the prior student ambassador or that student perspective within that meeting might help create a welcoming environment for the new ambassador as well. But anyone who is interested in participating is certainly more than welcome. If they're available, I'd love for them to participate in the 4th of July tabling event. I think that'll also be a good way to get them exposure, to learn how to talk about the committee. And I think it's one of the highlights too, is to be able to get out in the community and really do that outreach work that the student ambassador is kind of designed to do. And with that, I would like this person to start next meeting in July, if they're available. And again, if anyone would like to join the preliminary meeting, or if anyone has additional comments or thoughts or ideas for the student ambassador, I'd be happy to take those now as well. And I can include that in my preliminary email to the individual.
What date was the preliminary?
It has not been set yet. But I will reach out, and depending on who wants to be involved, we can coordinate together availability.
It sounds like it would have to be next week, right? Or the week after. In the next 2 weeks, if you want to have them doing the tabling at the 4th of July.
Yeah, ideally. Yeah.
Any other questions? Any public comment on this?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, well, I'll just comment and say that's great. So awesome. Thanks. 1,000, firstly, just getting 1,000 eyeballs on this or 2,000 eyeballs is great, just from an awareness point of view is super. And the fact that we're able to get at least one applicant and hopefully said person acceptable. So that's great. Good job.
Thank you.
It'd be nice to have them lined up for the next meeting. Any further points on this one? Nope. Good. Okay, in that case, we're on to item C, which is discussion of the 4th of July event and committee's participation. So is that, I don't know if, I'm not sure who prepared the attachment, but is that you, Phoebe or Sarah?
Yeah, I'd be happy to kind of give an overview and welcome other comments as well. But Karen and I and Phoebe have met and talked about how we want to approach the 4th of July tabling. We've seen a lot of the materials that have been shared in the past, including materials from our partners that we would like to keep included within our offerings, including the Resilient Neighborhoods Initiative, some documents from MCE, I believe. But then primarily, as you can see in the attachments, we have 2 documents that we would like to have poster board size or quite larger that can be our main talking points for visitors. One kind of highlights the primary greenhouse gas emissions for Corte Madera residents to really be able to highlight the high value ways that they can reduce their footprint. And the other document is a summary of the town's progress on the climate action plan. And I think this can be a great way to highlight the town's efforts and dedication to the climate action plan. In addition, as kind of a point to get people engaged in the tabling, we're going to have a climate pledge activity where if someone participates, they can enter a raffle for a prize, for a gift card perhaps. And as part of this, we'll invite them to write a climate pledge. On this document here, this is a list of some sample ideas that people could refer to if they really don't know where to start. We'll also encourage people to write their own pledges depending on what their lifestyle choices are. They'll write that pledge on a Post-it note. They're going to stick it on a large whiteboard that will be present at the table. And the culmination of these Post-it notes will really have a visual representation of the importance of climate actions from the community members at the event. And we hope that the more people see the importance of taking climate actions within the community, the more motivated they will be themselves to participate and also work to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. At the table, we'll also have some talking points that those who are participating in the tabling can refer to keep our elevator pitch really clear and simple so people understand what our committee does and to be able to answer questions for those that come to the table. And we hope that this will help kind of highlight the work that the committee's doing, as well as ways that people can make changes, big or small, in their individual lives.
So I just want to add to that. So actually the 2 big poster boards, which are the first side, so they don't really address what you can do. They really just address what the greenhouse gas, where it comes from. And then the second one is what the town has done. Now, what's not shown here is what the committee has done, but sort of implied. Then if you look to the checklist of actions, I guess what I was thinking in terms of, we haven't refined the talking points, is, make sure people know this is where your greenhouse gas comes from, and then the town has been working to reduce it, and there are various points on what the town really has done. I think this is a really almost ready climate action list, but I think if we could group it in terms of long-term, short-term, or maybe rank it, that kind of thing. And I did have the thing of just a little editorial comment. I don't think we need old gas appliance, but rather maybe replace that with gas, space and water heating appliance. You can always replace it, it doesn't have to be old, but just make sure people know it's not just cooking, because that's kind of minor. But just kind of rank order this in some way, long-term, short-term, whatever, so we're highlighting what the issue is, where the greenhouse gas comes from, what the town's done, and what you can do. And maybe, have that as the overall message. And then I think, to Sarah's point, people who are better at engagement than I, the idea is, okay, we have a whiteboard, come commit. And I think they've been toying with, do we have a raffle? Do we have something so people have an incentive to put it down, and then later there'll be a few gifts. So that's the overall focus. It is adult oriented. Kids, however, can come and say what they want to do to reduce it, and, look through and, that kind of thing. What can they do? They can buy. I know amongst the teenage girls, there's a big thing called thrifting. They go to thrift stores because it's, sustainable and eat less. I don't know, but we could certainly engage that way. But the idea really is those 3 points. What contributes, what the town's done, what you can do.
So this is a time for clarifying questions before we give feedback. If there's no clarifying questions, we should ask if there's any public comment. We have a clarifying question? No. In that case, is there any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, so discussion is open for this.
Yeah, I just have, should we be doing something of saying what the committee itself has done, the outreach, or what are people's thoughts that, in assembling all this tabling material that didn't sort of pop up, but do we want to?
Yeah, so partially address that question. I guess I thought it was a really good start and a lot of good content here. I did feel maybe kind of on the similar thread that it didn't closely align with what our priorities are as the committee. So if we could highlight more on the EV charger, which is what we're pushing on this year, it also aligns with the pie chart in terms of impact. And so question of maybe rank ordering these or prominence, and then also heat pump water heaters, which is mentioned kind of obliquely. But if we could kind of make that more of a sort of upfront and center thing, since it's something that we've spent time focusing on and promoted. And to your question, I also, on a similar note, I thought in terms of 2024 highlights, it doesn't actually mention the heat pump water heaters, which was, so maybe it could, what was our achievement about heat pump water heaters? Well, we raised awareness. We had a session. We convinced town staff to do a 50% reduction in permitting fees for heat pump water heaters. I'm not sure what you want to say, but I would just make sure we do include those two elements more prominently, because I think those are the aspects
So,
that were.
I have a question, Phoebe. So is that something in terms of the CAC outreach efforts, would we include that in the town accomplishments, or do we want to include it somewhere else? For instance, we could, if we sort of rank order this, here are the climate actions you can take, we could have bullet points that say Climate Action Committee has promoted, or we could put it at the bottom. It's a little, where do we wedge that in? I guess that's what I'm wondering. Do you have suggestions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So just to give some context, this climate action progress infographic was actually something that I had already created separately, was not related to 4th of July. It was just wanting to showcase the town's progress so far, and it's been included in the newsletter and on the website, a couple of different places. And then Sarah asked if we could get it printed for the 4th of July. So that's why there isn't, it's not really focused on the Climate Action Committee. Although of course the heat pump effort was very successful. It's more big picture, the town's progress on greenhouse gas reduction and climate action plan implementation. So I think it would be great to highlight, yeah, what the committee's focus areas have been. I'm not sure that this infographic is the best place to do it. It's also already been sent to be printed. So
Let me, okay, because I want to minimize the number of handouts. I think if we kind of make the checklist more succinct, maybe at the bottom, we can have a section which says Climate Action Committee outreach efforts, and then just highlight heat pump water heaters, formulating, promotions on EV charging, something like that.
yeah, another consideration, we do have some of the heat pump water heater postcards printed, and we can print more of those. And we could include or have on hand a draft of the EV outreach, sort of to showcase those. And it could also be part of the talking points document as sort of what the
Yes.
committee wants to highlight as focus areas. Or we had also discussed yesterday, sort of adding, whether it's Post-its or little call out boxes that we could add to any of these signs to sort of highlight areas that the committee is focused on. There's actually more space on this one that if the committee wanted to add, the focus on heat pump water heaters or EVs.
One thing I had thought of is sort of a bumper sticker size saying, actually, now that I'm looking at this, it wouldn't work, but I don't know. So on second thought, I think having the postcards and, maybe having available saying the climate action, just as a talking point, climate action committee, we've been promoting this and we're promoting that, and just having those available for people to go. I think if we refine the checklist a little bit and put it in our order of priority, maybe that would work.
Yeah, with the QR codes, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. QR codes, yeah.
And if it's useful, I can always make an additional document too that we have for reference that highlights some of the committee specific accomplishments.
Yeah, I think that would be in the talking.
The talking points up? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm less hung up on the accomplishments than I am on like prompting people to like, what's the call to action?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we align the messaging around the things we're putting effort into, and we actually now have some resources behind. So we have something we can point people to as a resource if they go, oh, I am interested in that, actually, then where do you go? So
Makes sense.
I have a few comments, but I'll save mine for.
I think one thing that can be mentioned on the second item is, consolidating trips. Not just ride your bike, do this, but when you drive your car, if you can consolidate your trips, you'll save a lot of people drive around kind of mindlessly doing things, doing various errands.
And walking, yeah.
And then, the Resilient Neighborhoods has a climate pledge at the end, and I don't know if that can be combined somehow where that's a great program, and if those two can be combined somehow, that would be a good thing. And I don't know on the first item, just an explanation, or maybe that would be something that the person at the table would tell them why you want to run your dishwasher between 9 and 4 instead of, or 4 and 9, or why you don't want to run it between 4 and 9, but why you want to run it during the day and do things that consume energy during the day, because that's when more carbon-free energy is available. So those would just be explanations that would go along. I think this list is fine as long as it's explained as well.
So I had a few comments. I think, again, I think it's a good set of materials as a starting point. It's pretty dense. There's a lot of content here. The infographic is like jam-packed, so I don't know how big it's being printed, but you said it's already gone on the printer, so.
Yeah, I think 20 by 23 inches. So it's like the tabletop signs that we've had at other events.
Okay. Okay, well, hopefully people will dig in. I mean, there's just a lot on there, so it's a little hard to like know where to where you're trying to draw people's attention. But I guess as a conversation starter, it's good. On the list, again, I feel like there's a lot of items here. We've got 8 separate bullet points. And I would see if you can trim it down a little bit. And then as the discussion, try to sync it more with the things we've been pushing, sort of EVs and heat pumps. And I might consider having like an icon or something instead of the check mark, just that kind of calls out a little bit what the topic is, because currently I sort of look at it and it's like, well, it's a lot of stuff. So maybe there's a way to consolidate a couple of the points, or maybe there's some that don't need to be on this particular page. And I think to tie it back to the EV charger multifamily thing, I think the message for maybe there's a separate, it's like advocate for EV chargers within your complex or something. If that's what the call is. And then then maybe we could link to the county materials, Phoebe, that you were talking about. So if somebody does come up and say, yeah, I'd love to get an EV, but we don't have any chargers in my building. Well, here's what you do, right? So those are my main points. I think I had one nit on this chart, the pie chart emissions. I think it should say direct emissions, right? Or something to that effect. But it's not activity based. This is right, these are scope 1.
So these are the activity based.
Yeah, I would just say it somewhere, say activity
Okay.
based or direct emissions. Yeah, I mean, this is like way more material than we usually have for any of our tabling events, so it's great. But I think just those were my general comments. Any other comments on this? How are we doing on volunteers?
So we have, let me see, Sarah and Phil in the morning of the 4th of July, and then Karen is volunteered for the afternoon. And I'm planning to be there probably all day unless there's another afternoon volunteer.
Sorry, I'm out of town. Otherwise I would have, yeah.
Yeah, same.
And I think you're out. Yeah. So
But maybe you'll get your student ambassadors, to
Yeah.
participate. In which case guide them to the afternoon, it sounds like. Great. Well, that looks like a really good set of materials, and we could reuse that presumably. Yep. Okay. Good. Any other comment on that topic? No. In that case, we are on to updates and reports, starting with staff.
So I first just wanted to check in on attendance for the next couple of meetings. Our next meeting dates are July 16th and August 20th. So Pat, you've already let me know that you won't be able to make the July meeting. Does anyone else have planned vacations or trips that they know they won't be able to make one of those next 2 meetings? Just wanting to make sure we're gonna have a quorum. Phil?
On August 20th, I'll be able to make the meeting remotely.
Okay.
Mm.
No one else has any absences expected?
Not at
Okay.
the moment.
Great. So then just a heads up on the July meeting process. So that's the first meeting of the fiscal year. We'll have our new youth member seated who was appointed by council. recently, and then the three returning members who are reappointed, Pat, Karen, and Phil, will be reseated. And that's also the meeting where we elect the chair and vice chair. So just have that in mind. If you won't be at the meeting, you can let me know ahead of time if you're interested in one of those positions. And so you can still be nominated even if you're absent. And just let me know. And then I wanted to update you all on the environmentally preferable purchasing policy that was discussed at the last meeting. So I've been working on making some of the suggested changes that were brought up. Most of them have been able to implement, but in discussions with our town attorney, we are not able to evaluate the environmental credentials of contractors for public works projects. And that's state law. We're required to accept the lowest responsible bidder. So that's unfortunately not something we're able to incorporate. So just working on wrapping up that draft, and then we'll be moving into implementation.
Was PFAS and some of the other toxins, was that able to be incorporated?
Yes. Yeah, I added some language around avoiding PFAS and other chemicals.
Right.
And then just to give you all a heads up, if you're interested in attending or participating in the discussions around our new waste contract, the town has a contract with Mill Valley Refuse Service. They do all the waste collection in town, and that is up for renewal. And there's a discussion tentatively scheduled for the July 1st council meeting. So if you're interested, that'll be discussed. They also, perform duties related to SB 1383 implementation. So keeping organics out of the trash streams. They do bulky item pickups, those kind of other services that help support our waste reduction goals. So that'll be coming up on July 1st if anyone's interested. And that's all I have for staff updates.
What's the tenor of that conversation around the waste contract? Are there other bidders that are being considered?
My understanding at this time is no. We've had a good relationship with them over the past, I think, 10 or 15 years that we've been in contact with them. So my understanding is that we're currently only negotiating with them, and negotiating changes to the contract and updates to be more aligned with the state laws that have been passed in that time period.
And do you think there's a climate angle to it? Really?
Well, SB 1383 is a climate bill in a sense. So yes, there is an angle there with the organic waste diversion, and actually may also be of interest to this committee. Not that we talk about waste that much. It is a small percentage of our overall emissions, but we Zero Waste Marin, which is our JPA that focuses on waste reduction countywide, recently completed a waste characterization study, which hasn't been done countywide in a long time. And they found that about 60% of the trash, of what's going into the trash in Marin is actually divertible. And I think about 30% of that is organics that are still going into the waste. And then there's other, recyclable materials that are being put in the trash. So that was kind of a wake up call there. And I think there's going to be some renewed efforts and outreach around that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I finally took my daughter's lead and signed up for Ridwell. Has anybody else done it? Which is, oh, okay. Well, it's a company that, of course, there's a monthly fee, and they have bags for various things. And they essentially recycle things that nobody else does. What I got concerned with, taking plastic bags to Woodland Market, and I don't really think they do much with them. So like they have soft plastics and then plastic bags, that have foil liners. There's separate bags for those. And then they have many more categories, clothing. that is not, you can't donate. So I think waste, yeah, there is some opportunity there. And, this is a private, not everyone wants to add another $10 or $18 to your monthly. But anyway, I'm trying. So I'd be interested. I know Mill Valley is doing what they can and nobody wants their bills to go up, but there are other opportunities for collecting waste and recycling it.
Maybe they can put on paint on their trucks. 50% of waste in Marin is divertible.
Try harder.
Keep-
I think part of it is
Keep it up, Marin.
consumers too. Yeah, yeah. Well, that could be one of our efforts to really, it is a sorting thing.
Hmm.
Is that an online meeting? The July 1st?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm happy to join.
Hmm.
And the Zero Waste Marin board meeting is also public, and the agenda packet is on their website. If anyone is, and I can send it out as well if anyone's interested in seeing the detailed
yeah.
waste characterization study.
Did you want to update on AB, was it 306? Was the town's
Yes.
response or statement?
Yes, so the council did approve sending a letter to the legislature regarding AB 306, the state law that would prevent building code updates. There have been some updates to the bill, so I believe it's now been edited so that it wouldn't impact the 2031 building code cycle, but it still pauses the next at least 2 building codes, so no updates. And it's still, as far as I'm aware, it's still awaiting hearing in the Senate. So I don't have hearing dates yet for when it's going to be heard, but I believe it's being sent to the local government and housing committees.
And do you happen to know anything about AB, is it 942 or 492? I'm confusing them regarding the changes to the net metering, retroactive changes to the net metering contracts.
I do not.
Thanks. For staff updates?
Yes.
Okay. Any committee member updates or just general discussion?
I have an update that I enrolled in this term's Resilient Neighborhoods Initiative. My hope is that in addition to receiving the benefits of the program itself, to kind of have a better understanding of what the trainings include, so I can think about ways that we can help increase the outreach for that program, whether it's at 4th of July events or otherwise. So as those trainings conclude, if I think of other ways we can help promote that program, I'll mention it.
I think 2 people.
Oh, is that right? Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And
Okay.
Phil did too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good.
Great night.
Any other committee members, updates, comments? No. I just had I guess a question for everybody, which is, again, back to the heat pump water heaters. We put a fair amount of effort into it last year. I guess two things. One, could we get a data update in the next couple of months as to whether we've seen any uptick in installations, or maybe you know the answer already. And the second is, should we do another session like we did last year? I don't think we need anything particularly new, but if we could maybe get Mark or somebody to come and present again, because I think there's still interest. The incentives are still in place, or some of them are this year. Would it make sense to do another workshop, if we can call it that, heat pump water heaters during 2025?
Well, I'm going to address the first question. We put together what was initially called a scorecard, but then what is it called? Indicators? Remember?
Guys or something, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. And I believe I was due to update that in August. I think that was the timeline. So yes, we are due to update the data. Maybe after we kind of kick off this multifamily EV, we can once again think about doing something again in the fall. What are people's thoughts?
I think one of the challenges right now is the rapidly changing rebate and incentive landscape. So if were to start planning something now, it's hard to say what it would be like even in the next couple of months. But another option possibility in the near term would be just to re-promote the recording of our past workshop or send out some of the materials that we used put together for that in the newsletter or social media.
Yeah, although that's likely to, could be misleading from an incentives point of view, since we were fronting. I think that I'm not following this closely regarding water heaters, but I think when they're talking about doing away with the IRA incentives, that's to take effect next year. So I think for 2025, they'd still be in place for people who qualify. But aside from the incentive, I just thought, it's still a relevant topic. We've done the work, we know who to call. Would it make sense to have another, 1 hour session for people who are interested to ask questions? Not trying to create more workflows.
I think that's something, fall. And maybe early fall and one more time.
I guess we'll have some more clarity around the political situation, legislative situation regarding subsidies at that point. So.
Yeah.
Okay, food for thought. So, but thank you for updating the data when you get a chance.
Yeah, I could remember that. Yeah, August, I think Phoebe held me to that.
Okay. And as Phoebe mentioned, I'll be away for the next meeting. So Vice Chair Lang has agreed to chair the meeting. And we will, I guess, assess whether we want to have an August meeting. It sounds like everybody will be around, so I guess we should plan on having it at this point. From the future agenda items, I assume the EV will stay on there. Maybe you want to give another update on the student ambassador at that point.
I'd also like to add how we felt the 4th of July event went. We're doing just slightly different, I think.
And anything to apply to the Lions Club, I think it's September something. Okay, anything else? No. All right, I guess in that case, we are adjourned. Thanks.